Thanks everyone for joining this episode. We're going to do an audit of the Quarterwood Co. website. This is a extension of the Opsis marketing community. We try to provide tools and knowledge to help businesses with sustainable growth online. This would be one of those free resources that we put out into the world to help people understand how to build their website and how to grow their business online. Anytime that we're doing these site audits, I want to be very clear that this is not Frank picking on Matthew and saying, why didn't you do this and you could have done better on your website? This is not an academic exercise of building a website. This is a real world exercise of building a business that has a website. So there are going to be things that are not academically correct in terms of search engine optimization or web development or any of those kinds of things. And there are business reasons for why those decisions were made. I also want to be super upfront and clear that if we were to turn the focus on my own websites, I guarantee you'd find at least 1,000 things that I've done wrong in building my own websites, because I'm also trying to build a business that derives profits, not an academic exercise of just building a website to demonstrate competence and skills. Keep that in mind as we're introducing everybody to the conversation that we're about to have. Matthew, is there anything that you'd like to add before we jump into your site?
This one was done on the most minimal budget possible. I did it through my Shopify store and did it all from scratch. So I'm sure there's probably more mistakes than there are things done right, but it's my first stab at it.
Oh, and with reference to the minimal budget, I always like to point out that your budget includes money and time. And for some businesses, money is expensive and time is the thing that they invest. For other businesses, time is expensive and money is the thing that they invest. So it works with any size business, whether time or money is the resource that you're putting in. All right, so I'm going to pull up my screen share and we're going to jump right in and take a look at your website. I have your homepage already pulled up for us to look at. Right at the top here, we have a beautiful picture of some furniture that I presume you built. And that's one of the major advantages that you have with the work that you're doing, is that your work is very photogenic.
For sure.
Creating furniture, all of the different pieces. As we scroll down the page, we've got some information introducing the types of work that you do, the things that would be valuable to the customers that you would work with. This is a great way to be able to put more words on the page without forcing the user to have to scroll endlessly down the page. If Made in America is the thing that is most important to you, you can open this drop down and there are additional words there that explain how your business solves this problem for people. But if your high quality is the most important feature to you, you can open that. If you were to open all of these, you can see how much longer this page would be if you were to just have all of those blocks of text. So this is a often overlooked design feature that can really tighten up a page and allow the user to create a choose your own adventure for figuring out which of the features is most important to them. Is that something that you had in mind as you were putting this page
for the
together?
homepage, that's definitely something I wanted to keep it as concise as possible. So whenever there was the option to create the drop downs like that, that's definitely something I geared towards in as many places as possible, just so that you don't have to scroll quite as much. It gives them a better, quick overview of what information is there, and then they can pick and choose exactly what they want to read.
How did you decide which items to put here for these 4 accordions?
That was just narrowing down on that was actually part of my thought process and trying to figure out what I was already doing that might matter to a customer. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it as concise as possible. If I was trying to explain what I do and the benefits of working with me versus another company, I tried to list 4 to 5 things, and that ended up being the 4 that I wanted to put on the front. Those are just the highlights that I noticed I was continuously bringing up in conversation when explaining my business to other customers.
I believe in a previous conversation, you mentioned taking some of your work to like trade shows and booths and things like that. So you have a decent amount of in-person interaction with existing customers and potential customers. Have you done any informal testing where you try each of these different things and see which of those phrases gets somebody to stop and actually talk to you at the booth versus continuing to walk
Yeah, I
past you?
have. I can't say that I've probably tracked it and numerically as good as I should have, but in those conversations, how I started to understand what people value the most. And that's in a very informal way is how I got to these 4 points. So it was more of a mental tracking of it.
Yeah, that's a
Oh,
great place.
and I
Oh, sorry.
also think that as I'm building the company, I'm building a product that I would want to see out in the world. These 4 items are also big selling points to me whenever I'm buying a product from another company. So I knew that if I was looking for it in kind of this priority order, there's probably somebody else out in the world that's looking for it as well.
Yeah, those are really good informal places to start measuring and testing those ideas. Just keeping track of the conversations that you're having with clients and what are the words that you use that get them to stop and actually talk to you. Even better, the words that you use that get them to open their wallet and spend some money. So the first step is for them to stop and talk to you. The second step is for them to buy a thing. And the ones that buy a thing, those are even better words to focus on. Something that you can do as you're moving this onto the web is that you can actually set up tracking using different analytics tools. So you could actually track which of these that are on the website do people click on the most. Keeping in mind that with that tracking, that's similar to what words get people to stop at my booth and talk to me. In the real physical world, stopping at my booth and talking to me is nice, but if you don't buy anything, that's not really that important. Same thing on the web. If somebody stops and they click on one of these things, that's very nice, but if they didn't buy a thing, that's not nearly as important. Ultimately, end up making a purchase or completing a contact form on the website that results in the sale of a product. The better you can align the words that you're using with the people that are actually spending money, the more you'll be able to focus in on those folks. This is related to keyword research. One approach for keyword research is to go and find a bunch of words and then try to create content to rank for it. I prefer to take the approach where you're looking at keyword research as market research. You want to make sure that you're using the same words that your customers use. So that way, when they're looking for the products and services that you offer, they don't have to think about how does Matthew talk about this thing. Instead, Matthew does the research and figures out how are the customers talking about this thing, and then make sure that you're using those words to describe the products and services that you offer. Keyword research, tracking what's happening on the website, all of that is a way of being able to listen to your customers and offer what they're
Do
asking
you
for.
have a specific way of doing that research to figure out how people are searching for certain products? I've used Google Trends and things like that before. I wonder if there's a better tool to use. Do you have a good tool to start with?
So I've got various levels of keyword research that I recommend for folks, going back to that booth and being able to actually talk to real humans, keeping track of what are the questions that people ask about. At that booth, are they asking for products that you don't have on display? And you can informally either just from memory keep track of, I was asked about this 10 times, these 5 different events. I should probably make that. Or actually writing it down and being able to go back and do some sort of analysis where a sheet that comes out of every event that's just a list of product ideas that came from asking the audience. And then you can go through and look at that list and see, oh, there's actually a group of things here that I wouldn't have otherwise recognized if I didn't write it down and go back and look at it 6 months later. That's a lot more difficult because you're only going to get a small amount of data and it's going to take some time. But if you're already doing these in-person events, that's one way to add a level of value to being at that in-person event that most people are just not taking advantage of. And it's much better to actually talk to a human and be able to have a conversation about what it is that they mean, rather than just looking at the words that they typed into Google and trying to guess what were they trying to achieve here. Looking at the words they typed into Google, such as Google Trends, and looking at your Search Console data, you can be able to see what are the keywords that people typed in that got them over to my website, or what are the trends that appear to be popular, and how can I create products that attach to those trends. But you are making an educated guess as to what the customer was looking for based on the words that they typed in. You may be really good at making those educated guesses, or you could be wildly off. That's why I like to give a couple of different options there. The slow, steady route. You can also blend these things. You might recognize something in Google Trends that you think would be popular, and then at the show event where you're talking to other people, you can share, hey, I'm thinking about building X, Y, and Z. Is that something interesting to you? And measure how many of the real people you're talking to seem to express interest in that.
Definitely.
So I like to
That
blend
makes a
all
lot
of
of
those.
sense. I was going to ask also, you can't plan for this, but so much. But how much do you think spelling comes into these things? Because I know you'll see some things that just get misspelled a lot, or some words that are commonly misspelled. Is there any way to filter, account for that a little bit when you're setting up your pages for to be searched for?
Yeah, with spelling, I when you're targeting Google for search engine optimization, it is pretty good at being able to correct
Okay.
people's spelling. So you don't necessarily have to optimize for misspellings. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. For those that are looking at my screen, you can see I have a bunch of tabs open here. Where on your regular homepage is on your domain that you own directly, but you also have a store
Yes.
on Etsy, and Etsy has its own search engine. A common misconception is that people think about search engine optimization and they only think about Google. And since we're talking about misspellings and relating that to search engine optimization and keywords, I think it's important to skip ahead here a little bit and show that you have the Etsy store, which means you're also optimizing for the Etsy search engine. I don't know for sure. I'd have to dig deeper into Etsy's optimization, but my hunch is that optimizing for misspellings on Etsy is probably going to be more beneficial than it is on Google. You could probably get away with some keyword stuffing on Etsy that you could not get away with on Google as well. So you may be able to target those misspellings by simply having a comma separated list at the bottom of your product description. So it doesn't really distract from the product description, but it allows you to show up for all of those misspellings that actually do match with the product that you have. That's a common thing that will work in these other less popular, less common search engines like on Amazon and such. So I imagine that's going to work on Etsy.
Just you can see a lot of the titles I have on the Etsy listings. That it's basically any possible title that I could expect somebody to use, like bedside table, end table, nightstand, are all in the same. And I've noticed that on my store and other stores that I've reviewed as well, that's a common trend, and it seems to be working. So doing a little bit of the keyword stuffing in the title itself, but also in the description makes sense. I haven't done much in the description, so that's probably something I should look into more.
Especially with Etsy, because most people are not navigating the site based on the title. That's mostly for keyword stuffing to try to get your product to show up. Once they've typed something in and the search results come up, they're then looking at the pictures and deciding. So it's a very visual kind of search, whereas on Google, you're seeing a bunch of text and some blue links. Depending on the search result, you might see some pictures, you might see some maps and such, but it still ultimately is driven by text and the blue links. So the title becomes much more important over on Google, whereas on Etsy, your image is the most important, and your title and description are really just words there to help the search engine put your product into the list whenever somebody
Okay.
searches for something.
Keyword stuffing you said doesn't work as well on Google. Do they look at that as spam?
Oh, yes, definitely. The world of search engine optimization more than a decade ago did keyword stuffing on Google's search engine, and you'd end up with results that if you were looking for dog food, you might end up with websites for cat food because they put white text on top of a white background and included the word
Right.
dog food on there. So heavily filtered out of the search engine results today. Part of it is how that search engine works. Like I said, the images. So if you were to do this on Etsy and you do a bunch of keyword stuffing and you have, I'm looking at your products here, you've got cutting boards and you've got tables. If your product shows up and then nobody clicks on it, it's probably not a good listing. So you're going to move from the top of the results down towards the bottom. It's actually going to harm your ranking to do that type of keyword stuffing where you're putting misspellings into your product listing so that way it shows up. if the image aligns with what somebody was looking for and they just misspelled the word, they're still very likely to click on your product if they like your work.
That's a good point.
So that's part of the reason why a search engine like Etsy would not be incentivized to stop keyword stuffing, because they have other ways to be able to measure, is this keyword stuffing actually helpful to the end user or not? And Google doesn't have that, because the list of words is how they're deciding what is good or bad content. But while we're talking about titles and keywords such, I did pull up a site colon search for your website. Anybody that's not familiar with this, in Google, you can type in site colon and then put the domain name that you're looking for. And you'll see all of the pages that are indexed by that domain within Google. And so we can take a look at, what do your blue links look like? On your homepage, you've got your company name, and then a good phrase here, your custom furniture or craftsmanship. That's a really nice combination. But your page title is actually longer than this. And so there's a lot of characters that are included that are not being displayed. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's good to know where that break point is in order to decide, are those words actually helpful to me in a way? Part of what this blue link does is, when somebody sees this in the search results, it's your first chance to get them to stop and consider if they want to click on this or not. And if the words that are getting them to make the click are out here in this ellipsis at the end, it's not actually helping to drive.
Efficient. Load the
One of the
titles to where the catchy words are up front.
Yes, definitely. And this is, we're looking at it on desktop, where you have more character count for the width. On mobile, it's going to cut off a little bit sooner, and it depends on the device. Some screens are bigger and smaller than others, so there's so much variability across mobile devices. Knowing that on the desktop, you're already cutting off right at the end of craftsmanship, you can expect that on a mobile device, craftsmanship is probably going to be part of a word, or it might be dropped off entirely. So you might want to rearrange that a little bit. Similar to how you have on your other pages, the brand name shifts to the end of the title, because the more important phrase is the furniture gallery.
Okay.
This is one of those things that is a little bit nuanced. As you're a small business and just getting started, most people don't know your brand name. Maybe Nike becomes the most important word, and the rest of the phrase becomes secondary. As we're scrolling down through your title tags, I do also recommend, see your business name is repeated many times. If you can come up with some more creative title tags that might grab people's attention to get them from the search engine over to the website, it would be worthwhile to push the brand name even further down if it disappears from the title completely, until you get to the point where people are saying, I only want to buy furniture from Quarterwood Co. The brand name doesn't matter too much.
How would you go about figuring out those extra words to put into the title? Or is there some other method you go about specifically for page titles like this?
You want to think about the words that your customers are using to describe the thing that they're looking for. So here towards the top, you've got furniture gallery. That is a very broad keyword phrase, and it's going to be very difficult for a new business to rank for that broad of a keyword phrase across the entire internet. It might be easier for you to go after something like a American-made furniture gallery or North Carolina furniture gallery. I don't know exactly which of those phrases would make the most sense, but going with those longer tail keywords allows you to target a slightly different market and possibly be at the top of that list for that smaller market, rather than hidden 10 pages down in Google for this very broad market that you really have no chance of ranking for, given the size of the business at this time. It still uses that broader term. So as the business grows, you might be able to change this, and eventually you want to climb that ladder and take the top position for the keyword furniture gallery. But we're talking about a decade or more old business before you're going to even be able to compete at that level. And that's if your business does very well. You might be able to dominate Greenville, North Carolina furniture gallery right out of the gate, because there's so little competition around.
And while we're looking at the order these blue links show up in, I'm assuming that at some point in this conversation, you might be able to help me figure out how to more or less prioritize what blue links come first. Was that something to do with the sitemap inside of the website?
This right now is just because we're looking for everything
Okay.
for your domain. So this isn't actually related to any specific
Okay, I got
keyword
you.
search. Yeah. And then I have another site colon search that I did for your Etsy store. What we did here is site colon, we put in the Etsy domain, and then I threw into quotes Quarterwood Co. with no spaces and the capitals as they are. That's how you spell the name of your store. And so here we can see every page on Etsy that references Quarterwood Co. as the phrase on there. You can see the store page, but you can also see each of your products because each of the products links to the
Okay.
store page. And so you can see how those title tags for each of those pages show up in Google. And if you're using the same keywords here on Etsy as you're using on your own website, there's going to be a little bit of keyword cannibalization where you might have your own website and your Etsy store both targeting the same keyword. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something to keep in mind. If you are really concerned about having your website at the higher ranking, you may at some point want to go into your Etsy store and actually damage the search engine optimization for your products in order to have the Etsy store show up further down the page, or not at all. It's something to consider, but it's also part of a strategy where most businesses focus on how do I get that number one position? With your business, you have a website that is your domain and you have a website that is an Etsy domain. So you could take position 1 and position 2 out of the first 10 positions. As you expand this, you could have different web properties in different places, and you could actually develop your business overall to where you could occupy positions 1 through 10 out of 10 and take over the entire first page. That's a very advanced strategy that most businesses don't even consider. But if you have multiple domains that are all pointing back to the same business, it is a possibility.
Well, that's an interesting thought because I have had the thought of, as the business grows, having separate lines of furniture that had their own brand names under the umbrella of Quarterwood. So that could be something that just happens naturally, and it's good to know that's an actual strategy that can be utilized.
Yeah, it is a very much a more advanced strategy and a challenging one. Something to keep in mind is if you do try to go after ranking for the top 10 out of 10 positions, you're describing running 10 different websites. So all of the energy and effort that you've been putting into one website, you're going to multiply by
That would
10.
definitely be,
It's not something that most small businesses are
for sure.
planning to
That'd be
do.
way down the road.
At this point, I think that we can jump over to some keywords. We started talking a little bit about keyword research and how to prioritize those. I'm going to pull up Ahrefs. It's one of the tools I use for looking at websites and being able to do some keyword research. We can see right up front that the website is very new. Looks like it started being indexed around the middle of 2023. You've got some nice growth patterns here. The yellow line is the organic pages. So these are the pages that are actually indexed in the search engine. And the orange line is the traffic that you're getting off of Google. Both of these are relatively small, but the business is also just getting started. The pattern of growth is what looks good. You're headed in the right direction.
Yeah. Honestly, rarely get many orders from the website alone. I've definitely been using the website as a portfolio or a place to send people that I meet in person to. And that seems to be helping right now. A lot of my sales and other just kind of people finding me fresh from just random searches does actually come through Etsy right now. I would love to get it back towards my actual website because you make more profit there. You build a relationship with the customer more there, from what I can tell. So that's definitely something I'm going to focus on more.
Yeah, it's getting started. Something to keep in mind with any of these types of projects. When you're making changes for search engine optimization, it is not uncommon for it to take 6 to 12 months, especially at the beginning, to start seeing results. As you start becoming more established, that time horizon shrinks to 3 to 12 months. But search engine optimization is not one of these overnight projects. It's definitely more of the long-term results types of projects. let's take a look at your organic keywords and see what your business is already ranking for at this stage. So here we have a list of keywords. You've got 149 keywords that you're ranking for. We can see the number of the search volume. So how many people are actually searching for this in the United States. You've got the cost per click. So how much are people paying for ads to be at the top of the search results? The expectation is that the more you're paying for the cost per click, the more profit you're probably making on the backside. That's not entirely true. I've talked with a bunch of people that think that they need to pay for ads in order to rank in the organic side of Google search results. However, most of the businesses that have that thought tend to go out of business because it's not true and they spend all of their money. Do your own testing is basically what I'm getting at with that. You can also see the position that your website has occupied. So you can see that you were at number 12 for this. You're now not listed at all.
Sure.
So
The
this
lost.
laser engraved coasters is a lost position.
What?
However, you've got Grill Caddy. You went from not ranking at all to position 25.
So the lost position, what exactly is that meaning? That it's just not ranking as well, or there's something wrong with the page that's causing it to not come up?
We would need to dig into what's going on the website, taking a look at this particular page and trying to diagnose it. So the first step would be to see, does this page exist? So let's click here and check that. The page does exist.
Yes.
That is a good step. From there, we can see that this was last updated in February of 24. We would want to go and take a look at Google Search Console and see if there's any errors that are reported there about this page. That would be private data that you would have to access your Google Search Console account to be able to look at. We could have a deeper conversation about any changes that may have happened on this page over the last few months. If we were tracking this on a regular basis, we'd be able to see in the last 30 days, all of these things went up and all of these other things went down, and we'd only have to remember what happened in the last 30 days. So we would want to look at any of those changes and how we might be able to modify the page. Then we'd also, after looking at the things that you have on your own website, the next step would be to go and look at your competition. So have they made any changes that make you move from the number 12 best page for this search result to not being in that list at all? Maybe they didn't like that you took their position and they went and updated their pages and made theirs even better. And as a result, yours is not nearly as good anymore. So there might be an opportunity to improve that page.
Let's hope.
I would prioritize these based on search volume and CPC. The logo signs, where people are willing to pay $1.79 per click, and there are 600 searches per month, that might be a higher priority thing to try to fix, because this is one that was also lost, because there might be a decent amount of revenue there. You're also going to want to filter this through the lens of the business, because you might be able to tell me the logo signs are a real pain to make. Generally, the customers that are ordering that require a lot of extra work, and I'm not making nearly enough profit to make it worthwhile to go after this. You might be willing to sacrifice the logo signs keyword because it makes more business sense to go after grill caddies. Even though the CPC is lower, the volume is higher, and if you derive a better profit margin with less headache, what is the most profitable thing for this business to go after?
Now, in this scenario, that makes a lot of sense. That's something I'm dealing with right now, because I actually am trimming some of the smaller items that are less profitable out of what I'm building. And I haven't necessarily taken all those off the website, because I'll still build them if it really makes sense, but I'm not pushing it quite as hard in verbal conversations. But for these things that have lost ranking, if I know that I'm not going to be pushing them quite as hard and I'm not going to be optimizing the page anymore, how critical is it that I go ahead and remove that page entirely? Does that actually draw my entire site's ranking down by having less optimized pages, or are they just sitting there not hurting anything? Like, how much is it hurting me to have a lost ranking on the website?
At the earlier stages, it's not really hurting or helping much. And so the decision really becomes, is it worth the time or money cost to go through and remove the pages and deal with the redirects, because you don't want to just drop people onto a 404 error page. You want to send them somewhere else on the website that makes sense. The cost of making that change versus the impact to the overall business, the ranking. I worked with a roofing company, and they had a different SEO provider do some work for them on their website. And then when I was auditing the site, I noticed that they had pages talking about installing windows and doors. They said, yeah, the previous SEO person recommended that we have that content, so they built it. That person had done keyword research and didn't consider the needs of the business. As a result, this business was getting phone calls to install windows and doors, which they don't do. So they were spending money and time answering phone calls for leads for services that they do not provide. In that case, the cost to remove that content from the website is one cost to look at, but also the time and the money spent answering phone calls for leads that have nothing to do with your business is another thing to consider. So we'll talk about those laser engraved coasters. If you've decided that you don't want to do that anymore and you've got the page on there and people are calling you about it and you're turning down all these calls, then yeah, you want to spend the time and money to stop getting those calls. But you also want to think about what are the goals for your business before you create any of that content on your website to make sure that this is something that you want to put the time and energy into creating. One of the ways that you might use the Etsy store is to test ideas, and only after they've proven that they're profitable enough and that you want to continue going after them, then you move them to your own website. Because over on Etsy, if you just decide to delete a product and it results 404 error, that's on Etsy's website. That's not really your problem, and they've got a cleanup crew that's in it with that. You have to consider, how am I going to clean this up? Where am I going to send these people that would arrive on a 404 error page?
It makes sense.
With any of these more advanced keyword research tools, you're going to be able to get more data about search volume and per clicks. As we start digging into these, you're going to start seeing Grill Caddy, spelled this way, has 800 volume and 26 cents cost per click. Grill Caddy, spelled this way, only has a search volume of 10. Then you have these noodle board stove covers, which has 1,500 searches. And further down, you have noodle boards, where it doesn't say stove covers. That has 800 searches. I don't know anything about noodle boards, but if they're at all related to things other than just stove covers, these combined could be a couple thousand searches per month. That's part of how you can use the search volume data, the keyword research, to be able to help identify products that you might want to add to your line or that you might want to lean into a little bit more, knowing the size of the market that's interested in these phrases, which ultimately results in products.
That's very helpful. This website you're on right now, Ahrefs, did you say this was like a free resource? Is it a paid one? How do you access this?
This is the paid version of Ahrefs. I have a agency license because I use this for my own and all of my clients' websites. If you divide the cost of the tool by the number of clients that I'm working with, it's not nearly as expensive. So I always talk to folks about the free tools, using Google Keyword Planner, being able to use Google Trends, looking at Google Search Console. Those are all great places to start. As you start moving up the ladder and your business is growing, the revenue justifies investing in more data and more tools. Oftentimes, it can be better to work with a contractor of some kind that can help you once or twice a year with being able to do a deeper dive into the data rather than signing up for an annual subscription for a tool. So that's some of the data that we can pull out of Ahrefs. We can also look at top pages and see what's ranking the most and sending traffic to your website. From there, you can see the Grill Caddy. That's a top page again. You've only gotten one visit so far from that, and you rank in position 25, but there's the potential for 800 visits. So that might be one of the first pages that you focus on. Or you might decide that Grill Caddies don't have the profit margins and they're too much headache, and you might want to work on one of these other pages further down.
It's interesting to see that, because that's actually the best performing product that I currently have on Etsy. I got a lot of orders for that so far. Obviously not from the my personal website as much, but it's cool to see that kind of aligns with what I'm seeing on that platform.
The orders that you've gotten, are they from Etsy, or I know that you also talk with other real humans in person. So are most of those orders coming from Etsy?
Yeah, through Etsy.
Through Etsy. So that's part of how you can use these different sources of orders for a little bit of data about what is the most popular, and then take that information that you have about what's the most popular. We can move that over to organic search engine optimization, but you can also consider moving that over ad campaigns, particularly for anything that has a limited time horizon. With the grill caddies, I imagine there's probably a seasonal nature to orders for grill caddies. And so knowing this past year that grill caddies have been very popular, you might get yourself set up in a position where you're geared up and ready to sell a bunch of grill caddies as soon as spring comes around. And you could plan an ad campaign where you're going to spend a little bit of money on ads in order to try to get as many orders as possible. This is part of the reason why I push people to pull their marketing further into the future. Right now, we're recording this at the end of August. It's going to be September real soon. And before you know it, it's going to be Christmas. So you really should now already have a plan for what your Christmas sale is going to be. And even before Christmas, what's your Black Friday sale going to be? And right now, you should be putting together all of your copy. You should be taking all of your pictures. You should be getting all of your social media posts put together. Everything should be all put together, ideally by the beginning of September, maybe by the end of September at the latest. So all you have to do is press start on your marketing campaign for Friday through Christmas and end of the year sales. If you wait until November to try to come up with what you're going to have on sale, how you're going to tap into that market, you're already too late. And so the same thing for springtime with the grill caddies. You need to have your springtime sale plan put together by the end of the year. So around Christmas time, you should be thinking about what is the spring sale cycle. I pulled up 5 of I used the top page off of Ahrefs to select which pages. So we've got the home page here, and they've got a really good red, yellow, green light system. Makes it easy in a glance to see how the website is doing. And performance is the primary issue here. On mobile, if we look at desktop, performance is not as bad, but still an issue. For anybody that's not familiar with Page Speed Insights, each of these suggestions has a drop down, gives you a little bit more details about it, links to support documents so you can read more about it. Spoiler is that on all of these pages, we'll take a look at the others, image optimization and being able to condense the files through the use of a CDN, a content delivery network, is the main thing that can be improved website here. But here's Quarterwood Co. looking at the Grill Caddy page, mobile, the performance, same thing. When we switch to desktop, performance goes up, best practices goes down, but it's also in the orange. It's a pretty high score, so not as urgent as the red for performance. That's the main thing I would focus on. Also with mobile, given that the mobile experience is the one impacted here, somewhere in the ballpark of 60% of internet traffic is now on mobile devices. So this is impacting about 60% of your customers. The first thing that I would do with this site is on all of these, it references image optimization. So how are you optimizing images before you upload them?
I can't really say that I put much thought into it, honestly. Just to make sure it's a file, but the file management system built into Shopify actually accepts, because there's certain ones that don't. So I do some cropping to cut out a lot of excess as far as like the actual size of the image, but I haven't done much in the way of looking at file size. So I'm just not surprising that this is a problem.
So the fastest, easiest thing that I recommend for everyone to do is there's a website called Squoosh. They spell it with 2 O's there, squoosh.com. And you just drag and drop an image in this area, or you can click the link and go through your directory structure to find an image. And then it will walk you through optimizing the image. In the bottom corner here, it'll show you the percentage that the image has been reduced. Step 2, after you've got that done, drag and drop it into Squoosh here. Change it to either a JPEG, even better, a WebP file format. And you can adjust the settings to be able to shrink the file size as much as possible. One of the cool things that Squoosh does is it will have a little bar down the middle of the page where you can see on the left-hand side the original image and on the right-hand side the optimized image. And there'll be a point where you optimize it to make it so small that it like garbage. So you just move the slider back a little bit so that way it looks good on the left and the right, and then you download and save that file. I always throw at the end of the file name -compressed. That way I know the difference between the unoptimized larger file and I've got the optimized file that just has -compressed at the end of the file name, and then upload those. That's going to get you like 90% of the image optimization with 10% of the work.
Great.
And then the other thing to look at is I went ahead and pulled up the Shopify documentation. They have an article that talks about improving your store performance that walks you through several steps. This does require making some code level kind of changes, uploading some files, but it walks you through that process step by step and explains how to do it. So those would be the easy beginner step and the more advanced related to Shopify for addressing the performance issue on the site.
Great.
And we have already run to the end of our conversation here, so I want to open up for any other questions that you have that we didn't discuss yet.
Definitely, to start out with, I'm going to look at these pictures and make sure that get those compressed properly. That's something I hadn't put much thought into. Would you say the number of pictures on a specific listing also plays into this because it has to load all of those at one time? So if I have like just excess different views of the same product that aren't necessary, try to trim those down, or is it really about just compressing them and optimizing the individual one?
I would start with compressing and optimizing the images. The next step that I would do is, because when you're selling something like furniture, it's difficult to decide exactly what angles people want. Almost no matter what images you put up there, somebody's going to want to see one more image with one more angle or one more lighting option. So I would try to hit the largest number of people meeting their needs, and then potentially having another page that is an extended gallery of the product. And so from the product page that you're trying to rank in search, you can have a link that goes to a gallery page that has hundreds of photos. And you just know that page with the larger number of photos is not optimized for search. It splits the problem into two pieces. The page that you're trying to rank in search has more limited information in order to make that page faster, but it links to the page that you're not trying to rank in search that has even more information, and you know that page is going to be slow, but you've gotten permission to slow down the page because the person clicked a link saying, I want to see hundreds of images.
That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. Part of the way that I like to frame those things is getting permission. If I want to take a look at a product on your website, I haven't given you permission yet to take 10 minutes to load on my computer. I've given you permission to take about 30 seconds to show me this page, or I'm going somewhere else. After I've started to express interest, then maybe I'm willing to click on your YouTube video and watch a half an hour discussion of how you created this piece of furniture because I'm really excited and I'm interested in buying it now. Same thing at the booth. If you were to, every person that stops at your booth, go 30-minute description of every little thing that you did on a piece of furniture, they're going to get frustrated and walk away. But I'm certain that there are people that stop at your booth and what you thought was going to be a 30-second conversation turns into half the day.
Another question I had for you, talking about like just SEO in general, I hear the backlinks a lot. Does that play into what I'm doing now, or is that a more advanced thing to worry about?
So the starting point with backlinks is to think about what places around the internet should naturally point back to your website. As an example, when we get done with this site audit and I put this up on the internet, I'm going to be linking back to your website because we talked about your website and did an audit on it. That's not going to be a valuable backlink for you because I'm talking about digital marketing and you're talking about custom made furniture. What would be more valuable is if you go on podcasts about creating custom furniture and being interviewed on that podcast, you get into the nitty gritty and nerd out about creating furniture, and you're getting links back related to that. The thing to keep in mind with the content that's being built on the other website is there are these link buildings that you can hire that'll tell you, oh, I'm going to build you 10,000 links for $100. What they're actually going to do is just build 10,000 links randomly all over the internet that are pointing back to your website. And you're going to set $100 on fire for them to do that because those links are not necessarily related to the products and services that you're offering. The more high touch, you going on to podcasts, writing articles, doing events locally, all of those things create a footprint that says this other website is about these topics that these websites are about, and it might be related to this region of the world that these other websites are about.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Aside from something like that, what would you say is that 80-20 on just making Google realize that you exist, but that Google see you as a professional set up website that is worth the effort of actually putting you up higher in a rank? Because I'm assuming that there's probably, just like we have right here, a performance score for each individual page. Probably one for the entire website, is correct? So what's the one thing that makes you stand out as a more professional website?
Yeah, as you're starting out, going with those trade organizations, local events, when you're going and setting up your booth at different places, if they have a website and if they're able to link back to your website, being able to show that you do present at different trade shows and things like that, all of those can add a lot of value. You want to look at who your competition is. And that's one of the things that some of the tools like Ahrefs makes a lot easier, is that you can look at your competitors' websites and see where they're getting links from. You then want to filter that list because some of your competitors might have paid that guy $100 to go build 10,000 links. And you go look through these links and you immediately see, oh, that one's garbage. That one's garbage. So don't try to go build those links. But as you're going through their list, you'll identify, oh, this one is a gold mine right here. Turns out this is actually, I don't know, the Woodworkers of North Carolina Association. And it costs $100 to be a member, and you get a profile. So you go build a profile and you get a link. You want to focus on just the ones that are the most related to you, especially at the beginning when you're just getting started. It's so easy to go out and build all of these garbage links, and then you develop a reputation in the search engine for being spammy. If the first 100 links that they see are these garbage links that they can quickly see, oh, this website's playing games, we're going to put them into our playing games category, versus we're going to put them into the high value serious business category.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Does that make sense?
That's cool. I could probably ask 1,000 more questions because there's so much that I don't know, but I thought this is really helpful, especially just the performance of each individual page. Shopify does give you some warnings whenever things aren't necessarily performing at the right speed, but not really knowing how to address it. I hadn't found that page you found on Shopify, but it seems like you knew what to look for a little bit better than I did. And yeah, that right there is definitely going to be helpful, as well as the Squoosh and everything else she's told me as well is opening, because a lot of these things are pretty simple. It seems it's just knowing to do them is what matters.
Yeah, that's part of what I point out to folks, is that I've been building websites for over 25 years. And the difference is not that I don't make mistakes. It's just that I might have made that mistake 10 years ago. With this, looking at the speed test results, I quickly could see that this is something related to optimizing images and configuring your CDN, your content delivery network. I work with WordPress websites, and I know exactly how to do that step by step, but I did have to go and look at the Shopify support documents to find where they've documented that. I knew to look for support documents related to their content delivery network. I'll send you the URLs for these support documents, and also for anybody that's watching the interview here, these will be in the description.
Awesome. I appreciate your time. I'm sure I'll be asking more questions in the future. It does seem like it would get very time consuming trying to build the business and do all this at the same time.
Yep. Everything costs either time or money, and you got to figure out which budget you have to spend on both of those. With that, I think that we will wrap up the site audit for today. And thank you very much, Matthew, for being willing to share your website and so openly go through it with me to discuss the business decisions around how you've built this website and why you've made those decisions. Just a reminder for everyone, the goal is not to build the perfect website. That's more of an academic practice where you're trying to demonstrate the knowledge and skills that you have. When you're in the real world building a business, you have to make different trade-offs about what's the most important. We've talked a lot about what is the 80-20 for being able to get the most out of a limited budget of time and money.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.